Hello YouTube, Sean Bradley here, and today I will be reviewing Passengers, the new science fiction film directed by Morten Tyldum and starring Jennifer Lawrence and Chris Pratt.
The plot follows a mechanic named Jim Preston, played by Chris Pratt, who due to a malfunction wakes up in a hibernation pod on the starship Avalon 30 years into a 120-year trek to a distant colony planet known as Homestead 2. After spending a year on the ship alone with only an android bartender named Arthur, played by Michael Sheen, for company, Jim finds and falls in love with a girl who is asleep in her hibernation pod, who is named Aurora Lane, played by Jennifer Lawrence. After morally wrestling with the idea, Jim decides to wake up Aurora for companionship, which leads to them growing closer to one another and eventually becoming lovers. But when the malfunctions get worse, Jim and Aurora have to find a way to save themselves and the lives of the other 5,000 colonists on the ship.
This film is directed by Norwegian filmmaker
Morten Tyldum, who had previously worked in television, music videos, commercials and short films. He made his first feature film in 2003 entitled Buddy, before following it up with 2008's Fallen Angels and 2011's Headhunters, adapted from Joe Nesbo's novel of the same name, and became the highest-grossing Norwegian film of that year. He would eventually make his English-language debut in 2014 with The Imitation Game, a film about British mathematician Alan Turing, which was nominated for Best Picture at the 87th Academy Awards and earned Tyldum a nomination for Best Director.
The film is, in a sense, a deception of what we had seen from the trailer. In the trailer, the film is depicted as a popcorn film about a couple in love who are stuck in space and there's a problem and they have to get out alive. That is true, but that plot point is what will dominate the third act. In the first act, Jim wakes up early, while everybody else is in hibernation, and the film deals with how he copes with loneliness. And he starts to have fun with it. He starts to have fun with sleeping in an upper-class suite that he broke into, eating at high-priced restaurants, and all that other stuff that he would not be legally entitled to because of his job position and his salary. And then he starts to get bored and feel lonely and even contemplate suicide at one point. And then the second act starts when he notices Aurora in her hibernation pod and he starts to fall in love with her and does pretty much a sociopathic thing in breaking her hibernation pod so that he'll no longer be lonely, but she'll be stranded with him on the ship until they die.
Then the third act comes along with the entrance of Gus Mancuso, a chief deck officer played by Lawrence Fishburne, who is only in it for a short amount of time, and he spends it as the role of Mr. Exposition, telling Jim and Aurora some of the plot and what they have to do.
Prior to seeing this film, I had watched Morten Tyldum's previous film, The Imitation Game, which was a great film. Now, thinking back on The Imitation Game, as I am doing this review, moral questions were raised, such as
when Alan Turing cracks the Enigma code, he and his team realise that they can't tell the Royal Navy of the success, fearing that they may act on the information, which may lead to the Germans redesigning the code upon their realisation, thus voiding the team's work. This causes many soldiers to die when they could have been saved. Is it right, even though Turing's work had saved millions of lives?
And in Passengers, they do tackle some moral dilemmas, with the aforementioned stranding another person on the ship so that you won't be alone kind of move. Yeah, that's pretty sociopathic, mate. The two leads in the film are great.
Jennifer Lawrence is very good in her role as Aurora, and Chris Pratt is fun to watch. I like his presence, his charming charisma, reminding me of his previous roles in Guardians of the Galaxy and the like. Michael Sheen was good as the android Arthur. He is there to support Jim and Aurora during crucial points of the film, like when Jim first meets Arthur or during Jim and Aurora's first date. I'm not even going to talk about Andy Garcia's performance as Captain Norris, if you can call it a performance, because he is in, spoiler alert, 15 seconds of screen time.
No lines, nothing. He's just there. However, the thing that I had enjoyed more about this film was the score by Thomas Newman,
who is one of my favourite film composers. In a review of Saving Mr. Banks, which I did for my previous review show Cinemaniacs, I said that if I were to direct a film, I'd hire him to do the music.
The music in Passengers is beautiful at times, during the romantic scenes between Jim and Aurora, and in the whimsical scenes. Within the logos of this film, despite knowing that Newman had composed this film and then forgetting it, I was reminded that it was a Thomas Newman score, and that is because of the certain instruments that he would use in these kinds of scores.
One of my favourite film scores of his is The Letter That Never Came, from the soundtrack to Lemony Snicket's A Series of Unfortunate Events. It brings a tear to my eye whenever I listen to it. Newman had recently been nominated for Best Original Score for this film at this year's Academy Awards. However, he sadly lost to Justin Hurwitz for his work on La La Land.
But it's nice that he got some recognition and a nomination. The cinematography for this film is great. The colours are nice too. However, during the projection of this film at my local cinema, I noticed a couple of glitches in the print of this film. At times, it would pixelate at the bottom of the screen. It did this for about 4, 5 or 6 times, and I just ignored it and did not let it distract me. The production design for this film is great,
which was also nominated for Best Production Design, but lost out to David Wasco and his wife Sandy Reynolds Wasco for their work on La La Land.
Some of the sets look nice,
including the ship's bar, which took its inspiration from Stanley Kubrick's The Shining. The swimming pool which Jim and Aurora swim in looks pretty stylish. The suite that Jim sleeps in looks swanky in its design, obviously because it is a first-class suite, but everything just looks so futuristic and managed to contain a sense of style.
When watching this film, I was reminded at points
of the 2008 film WALL-E, as there are some scenes between Jim and Aurora that may mirror scenes from the aforementioned film between the characters of WALL-E and Eve. Not to mention that both films were scored by Thomas Newman.
In conclusion, Passengers is an excellent film which deals upon the general themes of loneliness and the moral films of sociopathic condemnation of others. Chris Pratt and Jennifer Lawrence are great actors giving great performances. Thomas Newman's score is beautiful, and this will be a fun night at the cinema for any sci-fi fans. I give Passengers a 9 out of 10. This is Sean Bradley, signing out. I'll see you later. Bye.